Okay, we're back. We have all of our cabbage shredded right here, and we have, if I do this, we have our water that you can see is boiling very rapidly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add the cabbage into the boiling water. Okay. And by the way, my food processor is able to go in the dishwasher, all parts. So what I will be doing is I will be putting my food processor in the dishwasher, and I accidentally spilt a little bit of the cabbage on the floor, which is not a problem, but we now have the cabbage in the water. What we're going to do is we're going to add some salt. For this much cabbage, about maybe an eighth, a quarter of a teaspoon is fine, but what you want to do is get a, this, by the way, is my 6-quart KitchenAid stand mixer, and you can see if I move it, you can see back here, it's much bigger than the regular one because you use the lever to lift the bowl up and down. So I'm giving the cabbage a little bit of a stir. What you want to do is you want to let that you want to get it back to a boiling point. Once it starts boiling, you're going to boil it for 3 minutes, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, it's going to take about 15 minutes for it to boil. So while we're waiting for it to boil, it's getting to be 3:30, and I want to have dinner at about 6:15. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the oven on. Now, my oven has 2 settings. It's a convection as well as a conventional oven. Tonight I'm going to use the convection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the convection, and I'm going to set it for 450 degrees. And I'll get in close so I don't burn myself, but set for 450 degrees. It's going to take 2 hours to do a 6-pound pork roast. And that may sound like a lot of time for a roast, but it's actually not. It's going to make it really good. So we're going to get that in at about 4 o'clock. And then we'll start the frosting, and then I've got to start making the dumplings. Now, I told you, or I showed you, I do have a KitchenAid Pro stand mixer. It's a little hard to see the whole thing. I'm not going to use that for the frosting. I am, however, going to use that when I make the dumplings. Now, if you remember what my kitchen table looked like last week or in one of the other vlogs, this is what that's what it currently looks like. So I did clean the kitchen table, and over here you can see this is my grandmother's stand mixer. It was bought in the mid-1970s, maybe even the early 80s, but she's had it for as long as I can remember. And you can see that it is a 3-quart. There's actually this is a 4-quart, and this is a 2-quart, I believe. And this is a tilt head model. So if I unlock it and move it, actually that locked it. If I move it, the thing tilts. Now on my stand mixer over here, the red one, this does not have. This is for the speed, and I'm not going to do that because you can see I have a lot of stuff in the bowl. But if I turn it around, you'll see there is nothing on this side. There is, and let's see if I can get to it. Let's see if you can see it. I don't know if you can. Yeah, actually you can. Right here. This is what moves the silver part is what moves the bowl up and down. And since I did that, you can see The cabbage is starting to boil. What I'm going to do is I'm going to push it down with my spoon, and I'm going to let that boil for 3 minutes. Now, when it's done boiling, what we're going to do is we're going to drain off almost all of the water. We're going to leave about that much water in the bottom, and we're going to add, for that much cabbage, we're going to add 3/4 of a cup of vinegar, of distilled white vinegar. And then we're going to start caramelizing the sugar. We're also going to add the chopped onion that my husband did right here. So that'll be added after we dump it. We're also going to add about 1/4 of a cup of caraway seed to it, and that's going to give it a nice flavor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait the 2 minutes and 20 seconds. I'm going to dump most of the water, and I'll show you the next step. Okay, our timer just beeped, and I dumped out the water. As you can see, the cabbage did, and I don't know with the steam if you'd be able to see, but there's not much water in the pan. And I actually, well, it's starting to get more. Ideally you want about 1/2 cup to 1 cup of water, depending on how much cabbage. But what I did is I measured out the vinegar. I decided to go with a full cup. And actually, I am going to have to, I'm also going to, because I dumped a little too much water out, I'm going to add a little bit more water to it. By now, the cabbage should not be, yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, and I'm going to show you carefully what I did. I don't know if you can see. The water line is up to about right where the bottom of my spoon is where the water line is. So you don't want the cabbage to swim in water, but what you want it to do is have enough water that you're not going to burn it for the next part. Now, the next part is you want it to simmer for 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it back to a boil. While I do that, I'm going to add the onion. I'm going to give it a mix. And because I make this all the time, I know the next step. The next step is caraway, and I am going to show you about how much caraway I usually put in. So that's about how much caraway I put in. We're going to give it a good stir. You don't want to over caraway it. I did that one time, and it was, not that it wasn't good, but if you over caraway it, the cabbage becomes more, you taste more of the caraway than you taste everything else. So what we're going to do is we are going to just stir that in. And like I said, this can be cooked ahead of time. It can be made a day or two in advance. When you're done making it, all you need to do is put it in the refrigerator once it's fully cooled, and it'll last. Ideally, you want to use it in about 3 days' time, but I sometimes make it a day before Thanksgiving, and if you do make it ahead of time, the next step, and you'll understand when I start to caramelize the sugar, what will happen is that it'll actually get a better flavor. But because the dinner is tonight, it'll be fine for tonight too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move my pan, get my pothole, there's over there. You do not need to cover the cabbage. The cabbage can be uncovered, which gives you an idea to kind of keep an eye on it for when it comes to a simmer, because you do not want to boil the cabbage. You just want it to simmer for about 15-20 minutes. I need my my pot holders. That's back, let that come to a boil. Okay, the next phase of this is you're going to need a fry pan, and you're going to want a non-stick or a very good fry pan, because the next phase, this is my All-Clad pan, and it's a really good pan for what I'm about to do. So what you're going to do is to put that on the burner, and actually I need to wipe it out. Okay, my oven is now preheated to 450 degrees, so that's ready when I put the pork roast in. My cabbage is just coming to a boil, so what I'm doing is I'm turning it down to a medium-low temperature. And again, this is something that you want to do. You don't want the cabbage to boil. You just want it to simmer, because now it's in the cook phase. So what I'm doing is I'm grabbing oil, because you're going to need oil. Now, this part is really, really tricky. And that is how much oil you're going to want to put in your fry pan. And it doesn't matter how many times I make this, I always put too much oil in. So, and I'll show you what I did. My burner is currently off, so I've got my oil in the fry pan, and I would say it's probably maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of water. Now, the next tricky part is I've got to find where the sugar is, and I'm not quite sure what I did. Oh yeah, there it is. Okay, you're going to need sugar. Now, unfortunately, like I said, my husband's diabetic, but to do a caramelization, I cannot use his sugar to caramelize. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually, use about 1/2 cup. For that much cabbage, 1/2 cup should be more than enough to caramelize. So I'm going to put my temperature on the stove on high, and I'm going to pour the sugar directly into the oil. So now you've got that, but here's the trick. I've got to do this fairly quick, otherwise I can ruin this part. Okay, we're going to use this. Now, what you need to do with this is you need to continually stir it. You need to stir it until it becomes caramelized, and it's going to look like caramel. It's going to be a nice dark brown. Usually, depending on how much sugar you use. Now, if I was doing 2 heads of cabbage, I would do twice as much sugar. Depending on the size of the cabbage that you want. If you're a one-person family and you're just doing it for yourself, then do a small head of cabbage and maybe cut back to 1/4 cup of sugar. And then use less oil. So what I'm doing is I'm going to continually stir this until it becomes a caramel color. And it usually can take anywhere, depending on your stove's temperature and the quality of your pans. My All-Clad will heat up really nicely and do this fast. So within, I would say, the next 10 minutes, it should fully caramelize. And actually, it might be a little bit faster than that today. And you'll kind of see what's going on down here as I'm doing it. You see how it's getting lumpy? Don't let that worry you. That's why you want to continually stir it. You want that to happen, because what that's doing is it's allowing the sugar to expand, and that's what will turn into a caramel. I freaked out the first time I saw that, and my grandmother assured me, because I was on the phone with her while I was doing it to make sure I wasn't going to set the house on fire, that I was doing it right. And you can kind of see, I'm going to bring it in as close as I dare. You see how it's starting to caramelize and it'll look like caramel? So actually that wasn't bad. That was a little less than, I would say, 5 minutes. So now that that's done, you're going to turn the stove off. Now, this is why I said I always use a little bit too much oil. You don't want all that oil in your cabbage, otherwise your cabbage is going to taste very oily. Forgive me, I'm moving the phone again. So what I am going to do is, I gotta put that back there. Peanut butter. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump a little bit of the oil. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to dump the caramel in there. So what I'm going to do is okay. Now, what I just did is I just dumped all of that into the cabbage. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my spoon and I'm going to put a little of the cabbage into the frying pan. What I did is I took all of that cabbage. Okay, that's what's left in my fry pan, and now it's all in there. Now, this is why you want it to simmer for 15 minutes, is you want all that caramel to melt on the cabbage, and that's what makes it sweet and sour cabbage. So when that's done, I'm going to turn it off, because if I allow it to boil for the full 2 hours, I will have absolutely nothing left in the pot. So I'm gonna let it go till about maybe 4:15, 4:30, and then I'm gonna turn it off, and then right before I'm ready to serve the dinner, I'll turn it back on and let it heat up for about 10 minutes. So that's sweet sour cabbage. Now I'm gonna let you in on a secret, or what I just did. I just wiped out the pan. Actually, I washed it. What you want to do is, while it's hot, and that's what my pan looks like after I washed it, what you want to do is, after you dump the sugar into the cabbage, after it's done caramelizing, is run your water as hot as possible. Put a little soap in it and wash it right away. I do know that, yeah, you can get burnt, and be in mind that it was on a hot stove and the pan is hot. The reason I do it right away is, if you let the caramel sit, or you put cold water into the pan, what's going to happen is it will become hard caramel. And trying to get hard caramel off of a pan is incredibly hard. It will take you hours of scrubbing to even get the caramel out of the pan. So it's best, after you've put a little cabbage in it, taken all of the caramel that you can out of the pan, run the pan under hot water, put a little soap in it. I use Scrub Daddies, and I'll show you my Scrub Daddies. My Scrub Daddies right here. Works beautifully in a pan. And this is why I say use a good pan. If you use a cheap Teflon coated pan, and let's say you forget and leave the sugar and it gets really hard, what's going to happen is it is going to be almost impossible to get it out of the pan without using some sort of abrasion on it, such as an SOS pad. I can use SOS pans on my All-Clad, because none of them are Teflon coated. However, I do not use SOS usually on my pans. My husband will sometimes, because sometimes that's the only way you can get stuff out. The reason I don't is, if you use SOS on a pan, what happens is you'll scratch it. Doesn't matter if it's stainless steel or not, you will scratch the pan. so I thought I'd add that as a tidbit. So now it's almost 4 o'clock. My oven is fully heated. What I'm going to do, I'm going to rinse out the roasting pan. And the reason why I rinsed it out is I don't use my roasting pans often. I use them probably maybe every 2 to 3 months, depending on what I'm making. And these pans aren't just for a pork loin roast. I make regular roasts and all kinds of stuff, but it got a little dusty from sitting in the cabinet. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get the pork roast out of the refrigerator, and I'll show you the next step. I do apologize today because I know this vlog is long and has been long right now. I'm not going to do step by step. To do the dumplings, I wouldn't, unless you know what you're doing. It's not easy to do Bohemian dumplings. I had a really hard time doing it, and I wouldn't suggest doing it unless you're with somebody that knows how to make them to do it. My aunt actually can do it from scratch. However, she buys store-bought dumplings at her supermarket in the freezer section. Not all supermarkets carry them, and they're different. There are different types of dumplings. You can do a potato dumpling, you could do a yeast dumpling, and you can do a bread dumpling. But you can also do a bread yeast dumpling. My grandmother, my great-grandmother made the best yeast dumplings. However, growing up, my grandmother made bread dumplings without the yeast, which are a little bit heavier than the yeast dumplings, but they're still good. So I'm not going to include this on this vlog because, one, it would make it really, really long, and two, it's too hard to explain how to do dumplings. I'll show you the final product when everything comes out on what I did, but I'm not going to include the dumplings on today's vlog. So, I'll be back with the pork loin roast, and I'll show you what we do. Okay, I am back. I've got my pork loin roast all ready to go. This is, like I said, it's a 6-pound, and I'm going to show you that it is, in fact, it's a 6-pound, 5-ounce roast. You can see that right here. Oh, if I move my finger, you'll see that. So, and when I did that, I actually found out I do have dumplings, so I don't have to make those today. All I have to do is steam them, which will make my life today much easier. I probably made these, and this is what they look like. I don't know. It'll be easier to see once they're steamed, because I sucked these when I did it. But these are the dumplings, so I don't have to do that today, which is actually a very good thing. One thing what I do need to do is I need to come over here, and I need to grab my rack. Grab the right one. Okay, when you're making, and I'm dropping everything in the cabinet. When you're making a roast, what you want to do is you want a rack. And this one was designed for this pan, so that's what I'm going to use it for. Sorry, you'll see me going back and forth. Like I said, my kitchen, when it was remodeled, they didn't do the best remodeling job on it, and they put a lot of circuits on. They wired it really strangely, which I didn't know about until about 3 years ago when I started having problems in the kitchen. So when I actually go to do the remodel, I'm going to do a lot. Oh, pardon me, I stuck my hand there. I'm going to do a lot differently with the kitchen. So what we're going to do, I don't need to wash this. What you ideally want to do when you get a pork roast, most stores will take the fat off of it. But if you ask the butcher, and I always have this done at the butcher shop, if you ask them for a piece of pork fat, usually they'll give it to you and it won't be included in the charges. They added a little extra to this because when they cut it, obviously it didn't have a lot of fat. Now, I'm not saying don't eat for people that are looking to lose weight or live more healthy. You can find pork loin roasts without fat. However, if it has no fat, the pork roast is going to have absolutely no flavor. So you want one with fat. If it doesn't have a lot of fat on it, ask your butcher for a piece of pork fat. So the next step is you're going to need your caraway. And I will show you what we're going to do. We're just going to caraway generously. Let's see if I can do this so that you can, okay, you can kind of see it. What I'm doing is, they chime the bones. So this piece of bone, when the roast is done, if they don't chime it, you would never be able to get through it because it's the thickest part of the center roast. This bone right here is. And you wouldn't be able to get it off the roast, which would mean that you would have a really hard time cutting the roast into pieces. You'd lose a lot of the roast. So what I'm basically doing is I'm just putting a generous amount of caraway all over the roast. And don't forget to stand it up and do the ends. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk it. Hold on, let me wash my hands. I just washed my hands, came right back. Okay, pardon me, the phone's a little shaky because my hand is wet. What we're going to do is we're going to add just a little bit more caraway to this because my husband loves caraway and so do I. So don't add a lot. Ideally you don't want to cover the entire roast in caraway. I've gone overboard sometimes and it's okay. Now, what we're going to do is we are actually going to put water at the bottom of the pan. Now, the reason we put water at the bottom of the pan is if this was the beef roast, you would get the drippings from the beef roast and you would be able to make a beef gravy. Because it's a pork roast, pork has the tendency not to give you a lot of drippings. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put, and I'll show you, I'll be right back. What you're going to want is a glass about this size. This actually is one of my favorite glasses, and it needs to be washed before I do this. But what you're going to do is I'm going to initially fill it halfway, and I'm going to pour it in the pan. Every 15 to 20 minutes for the next 2 hours, I'm going to continually fill it and put it in the pan. Now, the roast is not in the oven yet, so the first fill can be cold water. You can do it cold. After that, and you've put the roast into the oven, each time you fill the glass with water, it's got to be hot water. Because if you put cold water in a hot pan in the oven, it's going to quickly bubble up and it can cause you to burn yourself. So I'm going to wash this, put the water in. You want to make sure that your glass doesn't have any soap in it. So I got my glass, I got my water. Ideally, because I did this when I did do the cabbage, so my water was still hot. So this actually is pretty hot. I'm just going to pour it at the bottom of the pan. And I'm going to put the roast in my preheated 450 degree oven. Oop, one thing I forgot to do is because I baked the cakes, I forgot to lower the rack. You want the rack at the lowest part of your oven. So, and I'm going to show you that. It, in fact, is now in the lowest part of the oven. Now, I have two racks in my oven. I have an upper and a lower, so that is the lowest part. I'm going to shut that. You do not need to put a timer on, unless you're the type that will forget to do every 20 minutes. Then you can put the timer on. Because these are already frozen, you can hear that they're hard. I can't move them. I'm going to let these get to room temperature. I don't need to do anything with these until now, probably about 5:15. So in about an hour and 10 minutes, I'll put these in the steamer and get them steaming so that they're ready for dinner. In the meantime, now I can go frost my cake. So, I will be back, probably after, I'll be back at 6 to show you the complete dinner, what it looks like on the plate, and the cake, the finished cake. But I do want to thank you guys so much for watching my video today. I know it's extremely long. It's probably going to clock in at just over half an hour today. So thank you so much for watching. Tune in tomorrow when I take 2 of my girls to the vet to be groomed. The rest of the week, Tuesday I've got Comcast coming over to see what's wrong with the wireless portion of my internet. Wednesday or Thursday, I may run downtown. I have to go to Bloomingdale's, and I actually do want to get a new all-clad piece. So we may do that Tuesday or Wednesday. I also have a $125 bonus cash or reward certificate to use at Bloomingdale's. So that, and combined with my Bloomingdale's card, I'll be able to get a new pot. I dropped the coffee pot. So that's going to be on Wednesday. Thursday, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. If I don't go Wednesday, I may go Thursday. Friday, I have to stick around the house because hopefully by Friday I'll know when my iPhone 7 is coming, and hopefully that'll come on Friday. It's not a guarantee though. It all depends on the release and how many iPhones they had to send out. On whether or not I'll get that Friday, but stay tuned later in the week. I should have an answer probably, I would say either Wednesday or Thursday. They should announce if it got shipped out. If it gets shipped out by Wednesday or even Thursday, I should get it on Friday. If not, I've always picked it up at Best Buy the day that it's released, or at least with the last one. This one's different because I'm having it shipped directly to my house. So it may be a little bit different, but tune in to see that. I thank you for watching the video. I'll show you the final product in about 2 hours, and that'll wrap up today's video. So thank you so much for watching. See you at 6 o'clock with the finished product, and I will see you tomorrow. Okay, as promised, I'm going to show you the final outcome of the dinner. I'm not going to plate it right now because the roast needs to actually sit out for about 10 minutes to just get its juices back into it, but I'm going to show you, pardon my hand, that's the pork. That's what the pork loin roast should look like when it's done. The dumplings are also done, and you can see how nice and fluffy they became, and I will show you what the cabbage actually looks like when it's done. And that's the sweet sour cabbage. So that's our meal for tonight. That's Bob's birthday dinner. The cake is downstairs. I'll try to go downstairs. Yes, Tub. I have a cat that's not doing so well. Shh. And the finale to the dinner is Bob's birthday cake, which is right there. So, thanks again for watching. You're going to see the second of 2 parts right now. And I hope you enjoy it. Bon appetit. And happy birthday to my husband.